The sheriff's hand struck her like a slap from a storm sharp, humiliating and impossible to ignore. The diner fell silent. The coffee cups paused midair. The waitress's face flushed with anger and fear, and for a moment she looked like every other person who had ever been pushed into silence. But this woman was not like everyone else. She had once been a Navy SEAL, trained to move in shadows and survive in chaos. The sheriff didn't know that, and he was about to find out the hard way. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're rewatching from. I love knowing who is listening. Her name was Harper Lane, and she had chosen this quiet life for a reason. After years of deployments, after the kind of nights that never truly ended, she had returned to a small town and taken a job as a waitress in a diner that smelled of grease and sweet pie. She wanted normal. She wanted a life where the loudest sound was a bell above the door, and the scariest thing was a spilled cup of coffee. She wanted to be invisible. But invisibility was never really an option for her, not when her eyes were always watching, not when her mind always measured danger, not when her body still remembered the rhythm of a mission, even in the stillness of a quiet morning. The diner was busy. The morning sun poured through the windows, turning dust into tiny floating stars. The air was warm with the smell of bacon and syrup. People chatted softly, their voices weaving into the kind of comforting background noise that made the world feel safe. Then the sheriff arrived, out. Sheriff Blake Hollis was a man who wore authority like a suit he'd never taken off. He smiled at the customers, but his eyes were cold, like he was always calculating. He had a reputation in town, respectable on the surface, feared underneath. He had a way of making people feel small without raising his voice. He sat at the counter and ordered coffee. Harper served him with a practiced smile, her hands steady, her voice calm. She had seen men like him before, men who believed the world owed them obedience. When she reached his cup, he grabbed her wrist and yanked her close. His grip was firm, possessive. She didn't flinch. She didn't move. She just stared at him, her eyes quiet and steady, like a calm sea before a storm. "Don't ignore me," he said. Harper's heart thudded. Not from fear, from anger. She could feel the eyes of the diner on her, customers' faces shifting between discomfort and shock, the kind of silence that speaks louder than words. She could have walked away. She could have done what everyone expected, smiled, apologized, and let him win. But something in her refused. "You don't touch me," she said softly. The sheriff's laugh was low and cruel. "You don't know who you're talking to." Harper's jaw tightened. Her mind flashed back to her training how to read a threat, how to stay calm, how to make the first move count. She could feel her muscles tense, the familiar adrenaline starting to rise. She had left that life behind, but it had never truly left her. She wanted to protect herself without causing a scene. But the sheriff was not a man who respected boundaries. He slapped her across the face. The sound cracked through the diner like a whip. A hush fell. Some people looked away, embarrassed. Others stared, frozen. A little boy in the corner clutched his mother's hand, eyes wide. Harper's cheek burned. Her lips trembled. For a moment she was tempted to retreat into the silence she'd built her life around, to swallow her pride and let him have his victory. It would be easier. It would be safer. But then she saw the way the sheriff's men watched, the way they waited for her to break. She realized that her silence would become a permission. She realized that if she stayed quiet, someone else would be hurt next. Harper took a slow breath. She didn't lash out. She didn't scream. She didn't attack. Instead, she did something far more powerful. She stood. The movement was slow, controlled, like a dancer's step. She held her head high. She looked directly at the sheriff, and in that gaze was the quiet warning of someone who had survived worse than him. "You should leave," she said, her voice calm but unshakable. The sheriff's expression twisted into a sneer. "Or what?" Harper's eyes didn't waver. "You regret it." A laugh bubbled from his throat, but it was strained. He didn't know what he was facing. He didn't know the woman he had just humiliated had once been trained to survive in the most dangerous places on Earth. He didn't know she had been a SEAL. The sheriff reached for her again, and this time Harper moved like lightning. Her body flowed, her balance perfect. She grabbed his wrist and twisted, not to injure him, but to disarm him. The sheriff stumbled, shocked by the force and speed. The diner held its breath. Harper stepped back, giving him space to recover, but not enough space to attack again. Her eyes stayed on him, unwavering. She wasn't trying to win a fight, she was trying to end one. The sheriff's face reddened with anger. "You think you're tough?" Harper's voice remained steady. "No, I know I am." The sheriff lunged, but Harper was already moving. She used his momentum, guiding him into the counter with controlled force. He fell hard, hitting the floor with a thud that echoed through the diner. The room went silent again. Then slowly the customers began to move. People who had been frozen with fear started to stand, to step forward, to show the sheriff they were watching. The waitress at the next table whispered, "I'm calling the state." A murmur spread through the room. Not applause, not celebration. Something quieter, but stronger. Relief. The sheriff got up, furious, humiliated, glared at Harper, but he no longer had the power he'd believed he did. His men shifted, uncertain. They didn't know what to do. The sheriff's authority was crumbling, not because of violence, but because of a truth he couldn't control. Harper didn't move to attack again. She didn't need to. She simply stood there, breathing, eyes steady. She waited for the sheriff to leave, and he did. Not because he was brave enough to admit he was wrong, but because he could feel the room turning against him, because he knew he had lost. After he left, the diner erupted into quiet conversation. People approached Harper with tears in their eyes. Some thanked her, some hugged her. Some just stared, as if they couldn't believe what they had witnessed. Harper's hands shook. Not from fear, but from the release of the tension that had been building inside her for years. She had wanted a quiet life. She had wanted to disappear. But she realized something in that moment. You can't live in fear forever. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is stand up, not with violence, but with courage. Later, as the sun began to set and the diner returned to its normal rhythm, Harper looked out the window at the empty street. She thought about the sheriff, about the way he had tried to make her small. She thought about the life she had left behind, and she understood that her past wasn't a burden. It was a shield, because strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet refusal to be broken, because courage doesn't vanish, it waits and it finds its way back. And in that diner, under the hum of fluorescent lights, a woman who had once been a Navy SEAL proved that even in the most ordinary places, heroism can still be found. If this story moved you, leave a comment, share your thoughts, and subscribe to Whispered Words for more stories that remind us that true strength is often hidden behind the quietest faces.